Have you ever felt like you have been driven away from the presence, the place, and the power of worshiping your God? Have you ever felt like something or someone have interrupted or intercepted your relationship with God to the point where you feel estranged from Him? And many of us go through situation like this, situation happening in our life that cause us to feel like we have been estranged or driven away from the presence and the power of God. But we know as children of God that outside influences and forces should not and cannot deter our relationship with God. And despite how we feel, no matter the situation and the place that we might be, we need to continue praising and worship our God in spite of how we feel or the difficulties that we may face. Well, good morning, saints, and welcome to the Dixon's Devotion with Pastor Dixon. Today we are going to be looking at Psalms chapter 61. Psalms chapter 61. Now, in Psalms chapter 60, that was the end of the Mishkam and the Mishnah worship as we look at those type of worship and so on. And Psalms chapter 61, write down just these are psalms just written directly to the music director. No special titles or topic was given to them, just psalms to the music director. And here in Psalms chapter 61, again, this psalm is ascribed to David, and no one can be certain exactly when this psalm was written or the occasion, because as I said, there's not much details to it. But most theologians place this psalm when David was running from his son Absalom. During that time when he had to run, when Absalom tried to overthrow him, and he had to run from his son Absalom, and he was away from the city of Jerusalem. And here David also was making mention to the fact that he was not only driven away from the city, but we remember the tabernacle, the tent of meeting at the time, was in the city of Jerusalem, which represented the presence and the power of God. But since David was driven away from the city, he could not enjoy the privilege of going to the tabernacle, to the tent of meeting, where he can be in the presence of God, because as I said, we know the Ark of the Covenant rested in Jerusalem, and at that time that signified the presence of God. So David felt, even though he was driven away, that he was away from the presence of God, in the sense that he could not freely go and worship in the place designated to worship God. But yet, when we look at the psalm, we recognize the fact that even though you are away from a specific place, it does not mean that you cannot have fellowship with God. Because here David penned this psalm, Psalm 61, as a prayer, and we know that we can pray, we can fellowship with God no matter what the place that we might find ourselves in. And here David, as an exile from his kingdom, from his throne, in a strange place, here running from his own son, he uttered these words. That's why you see in the latter part of the psalm where he talk about preserving the life of the king. So now, with all that background, let us go now into the psalm itself and hear what the psalmist David has to say. So verse 1, it starts out with a cry. Hear my cry, O God, listen to my prayer. Now, hear my cry. The word cry there is an exclamation of deep sorrow, a cry for help. Hear my cry, O God, and listen to my prayer. A special prayer. David is entreating God to listen to his prayer. And he's saying, from the ends of the earth I cry to you. In other words, David was not in the presence or on his throne, his accustomed place, or in Jerusalem. As far as he is concerned, he was banished from the presence of God. He feel like he was at the ends of the earth, how he was running from his son Absalom. He said, that's why he said right here, from the ends of the earth I cry to you. I call as my heart go faint. Lead me to the rock that is higher than I. And David is saying right here, Lord, I feel like I am at the ends of the earth, so distant from your presence, your power. And David is also saying, from the ends of the earth I call to you. I call as my heart go faint. He going faint because he feel like his kingdom was split. Some of his best friend betrayed him. Some of his best friend has allied with his son to take his life. So he felt weak, he felt faint. It's one thing when an enemy comes in, an outside attack that attack Jerusalem or attack you. But when it's an inner attack, someone in your close circle, a family member, friends like Ahithophel and all these people try to bring you down, especially as a leader, try to bring you down or destroy you in whatever way or whatever capacity. You know how difficult that is. So David's heart was faint to the point where David recognized that, hey, I cannot fight this battle. I cannot win this battle. Only God can win this battle for me. And that's why he said right here in the verse, and he said so succinctly, he said, lead me to the rock that is higher than I. In other words, David was making it right there, plain, confessing that as a powerful leader and general that David was, he said, Lord, I need to go something place higher than I. My strength is faint. I cannot fight this battle. You have to handle this one. This is a tough one. My very own son is against me. Some of my friends turn against me. Lord, I cannot handle this one. He was surrendering that he is weak and the only way he can survive this is God. He have to rest and put himself on God, sheltered in the arms of God. Lead me to the rock that is higher than I is almost a situation when Moses said, Lord, I will show me your glory, and God said, come up to the mountain and I will put you in the cleft of the rock and you will see my glory pass by. It's the same illustration. David said, look, Lord, I want to be in the cleft of the rock where your glory can pass by, where you can fight the battle for me. And so it is in our life. There's a situation when we feel like we have to throw our hands in the air. There's nothing that we can do. And let me tell you something. We have to go to that rock that is higher than I, that is more stronger, that is more powerful than ourselves. And that is God. Jesus Christ is that rock, that sure foundation. And this is what David is talking about. The rock that is higher than himself. For you have been my refuge. You see that? A strong tower against the foe. David said, all my life you have been my refuge, my strong tower against the foe. Whoever my foes are, Lord, you have defeated them before, and I'm asking you again to continuously be my strong tower, be my refuge, Lord, against my foe and my enemies. We don't take it into our hands. Let the Lord deal with all of that. God will deliver. Trust him. Let him be your refuge in times of difficulty. And verse 4, I long to dwell in your tents forever and take refuge in the shelter of your wings. You see that? David was estranged from Jerusalem, and remember at the time the tent of meetings was the place of meeting. And David is saying, Lord, I want to be in that tent. I miss the tent of worship. And so it is sometimes situation cause us don't even want to go to church, the place of worship, to be with God's people, because we feel so downcast, we feel so defeated, we feel so depressed, whatever the situation might be that push us away from God. And we don't want to be around nobody, we don't want to be in the presence of God. But here David, I long to be in the tent of meeting. And I said the tent of meeting was right there in Jerusalem, but David was on the run. And he said, I long to dwell in your tent forever and take refuge in the shelter of your wings. In other words, the shelter of your wings. In the tent of meeting, or in the temple, in the tabernacle, in the Ark of the Covenant, you had what you call two cherubims around over the Ark of the Covenant, covering the covering or the mercy seat of the Ark of the Covenant. And it is believed that in the Holy of Holies, these wings were spread out that you could see. Those who go into the Holies of Holies, these wings were overshadowing the Holies of all Holies. And it is that idea David was talking about. I want to be in the shadows, in the presence, the very center of your presence, next to your throne, where the cherubims are covering the mercy seat. And he said, Lord, I want your mercy right now. I want your grace. I want your protection right now. Here in the shadows of your wings, where your presence is. And remember, the tabernacle, the mercy seat, the Holy of Holies, the Ark of the Covenant was a picture, or the picture of the heavenly temple. And so it is the presence of God, where the cherubims overshadow his presence with their wings. And this is where David wanted to be the center of worship. For you, God, have heard my vows. You have given me the heritage of those who fear your name. He said, Lord, you heard my vows, all the vows I made in my life to serve you, and I tried to fulfill my vows. David was not a man who made vow to God and did not fulfill it. He made a vow and he carried through. He said, Lord, you know my vows. Not only that, he gave himself, give his offering, his vows. You have given me the heritage of those who fear your name. He said, Lord, you have given me this heritage of those who fear your name. You made me king over your nation, your heritage. Israel was the heritage of God, and God, you chose me to be your king. You made me the heritage of your nation, of your people. And that's what he's talking about, the king over the children or the people of God, which Israel represented at that time. So you have given me the heritage of those who fear your name, the nation who knew the true and living God, the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. Increase the days of the king. Now we're going into the next part now, where he was asking God to entreat God for help and protection. Now he is looking now at he as the king of Israel. You know, he was banished away from his throne. He was chased out by his son, and his life was he was on the hunt. He was a hunted king. And he said, verse 6, increase the days of the king's life, his years for many generations. May he be enthroned in God's presence forever. Appoint your love and faithfulness to protect him. In other words, David said, increase the days of the king's life. Lord, I'm not ready to die like this. Lord, increase my days at the hands of my son, away from your presence, away from your people, away from your city, away from your throne. He said, increase the days. Let me live out my days in happiness and in fullness. Increase the days of the life of the King for many years and generation. Lord, let me see many years and many generation. May he be enthroned in God's presence forever. Lord, I want to be in your presence forever. Remember, the tabernacle, the ark of the covenant, all these things were in the city that represents what you call the power and the presence of God. As a matter of fact, the tabernacle was really in Gibeon at that time, but it was close to Jerusalem where he can go, but he didn't have the freedom to go to the temple to go and worship God. So that represents the presence and the power of God, and David feel estranged from it. He said, Lord, let my days and let me live in your presence. Let me get back to the throne of ruling over your heritage which you had called me to do. Let me get back to the place where I can freely go to the tabernacle and worship you and be in your presence and be there and feel your power. So this is what David is talking about in this situation. To be in the very presence and the very power of God. And many times we find ourselves in these situations, as I said, we feel so estranged from God. Verse 7, may he be enthroned in God's presence forever. Appoint your love and faithfulness to protect him. Lord, he said, Lord, send your love and your faithfulness to protect me. Lord, surely goodness and mercy shall follow me all the days of my life. Lord, show your love. Let your love protect me and your faithfulness protect me. David was leaning on the love of God and the faithfulness of God. To those who fear God, God will protect and preserve. And this is what David is speaking about right here. Lord, I want your presence. Lord, I want your power. Lord, I want your protection. And finally, in verse 8, David is saying here, then I will ever sing in praise of your name and fulfill my vows day after day. What David is saying, you think David is saying, Lord, if you pull me out of this one, then I will serve. You know, David was serving the Lord all the time. But remember, David wanted to live his life in the place of God, in the city of Jerusalem, where he can go freely to the tabernacle and praise God, not running away in some desert or in some foreign land from his son and have to praise God in the wilderness, which is nothing wrong with that. But David wanted to be where the presence of God was in Israel, where the people of God was, the Jews in Israel. So he's saying here, his quest is, then I will ever sing praise of your name and fulfill my vows day after day. In other words, David wanted to be forever, as he lived out his life, where he can go to the tabernacle of God, where the presence of God was, to sing praise to God for freely. And this is what it's all about. Sometimes we feel like we are so far from God, we are estranged from God, situation drive us away from God, and we feel like we are powerless, we feel like we don't have the presence, we don't have the power, and we are not in the place and position to truly worship God. And so it is when we look at this now, to take away in the Old Testament, God dwells in the tabernacle or in the temple. But now in the New Testament, God dwells in the believer's heart. And sometimes situation might cause us to feel like that relationship between ourselves and God is not there. Sometimes we feel like God is not near. The presence is not there. Sometimes situation make us feel like the power of God is not there. Sometimes the situation make us feel like we are not in the place of God, or we are not in the place with God. And despite the situation, pray, because no matter what, God is right there with us. God is right there with us, and nothing is wrong is crying out to God and say, God, I need your presence. God, I need your power. God, I need to be in the right place with you. My heart is not there. Lord, situation is overwhelming or has overwhelmed me to the point that I feel like I have been pushed away from you. But Lord, I desire you. I desire your presence, your power, and I desire to be in the right place with you. So saints, no matter what the situation, understand this. If you are a child of God, God dwells in you. And despite of your feelings, things might want to push you away. But remember this. Just cry out to God. And remember, no matter what, God's love and faithfulness is with you. And His presence, His power, His protection, and that place you have, that relationship you have with God is intact. All you have to do is just reach out and cry out to Jesus. Cry out to God. And He will be faithful, and His love will protect you and secure you and said, look, my son, my daughter, I am right here. You're in my presence. My son and my daughter, you're right here. I have you covered. You're protected by your God. So saints, no matter what the situation, continue to praise God forever and ever. Enjoy His presence and His place and His protection in spite of the situation. Saints, have a wonderful day, and may the Lord's blessings be with you.